So that money went in without paying tax on it through salary deferral, and you're going to roll it to a pre-tax IRA. So it's apples to apples, and therefore, you're not going to...
タコ作っとくよ、お父さん。今日は。
He or she wouldn't just automatically start making decisions. There would be an extensive discovery process with you, and if you're married, you and your husband, to talk about what are your goals and your values as a believer, and what is your time horizon, and how much risk do you want to take with this, and how are you doing in terms of your total retirement savings at this point versus what you'll need when you step away from paid work at some point down the road to whatever God has for you next. I mean, they'll work through all of these things with you and then deploy an investment strategy on an ongoing basis that reflects that. And if you want to use faith-based investments, they can do that as well. And that would allow them to come in and offer investments that where they screen out companies that violate your values, where they seek to identify and own companies that actually express your values through the types of products and services they offer. If this is a conviction of yours, that can be done as well. So how does that sound? Does that sound like what you're looking for, or would you rather make the decision yourself?
Well, no, that sounds right. It's something that I have explored a little bit. But, I guess my concern was, is that, I know banks offer those type things, or is it an investor or a investing company that and I don't know how expensive that is. I guess the risk of losing my money is scary to me.
Yes. Yeah. Well, let's talk about that for a moment. So, in addition to this $120,000, what do you have available or set aside for retirement? Anything else?
Well, a smaller amount.
Okay. That's
basically,
okay.
yeah.
So maybe 200 in total, or less?
I would say probably less.
Okay. All right.
Probably
That's
less
fine.
than that.
And what is your age, if you don't mind me asking?
62.
Okay. And how long do you plan to continue to work?
Probably 3 more years until I'm 65, probably.
Okay. All right. And have you looked at what your retirement budget will be, and is your plan to try to fund that from Social Security alone, or are you thinking you're going to need some of this in order to meet your obligations at that point?
Probably some of this. I will have Social Security, and my husband has a couple of retirement plans from different employers. So, we have planned some, but not a lot.
Yeah, very good. That's okay. So I think that's the key, is to determine what are we ultimately going to need. So if you were to put together that retirement budget today and begin to look at, okay, what are our bills going to look like when we get to this point 3 years from now? Most folks live, and this is just a ballpark, on 70 to 80% of their pre-retirement income, because hopefully the house is paid off, the kids are off the payroll,
Right.
We're not eating out at lunch, those kinds of things. And so if you figure out what that number is, and then you look at what your Social Security will be, and by the way, the longer you can wait to take that, the closer you'll get to your full benefit, and even up to age 70, if you were to keep working, you could grow that by 8% a year. But hopefully that'll cover the majority of it. And then ideally, out of this 200,000, let's say it grows to that, we'd pull an additional 8,000 a year and never see the principal decline. That's $650 a month. But it is going to need to be invested with some allocation to stocks, which means some risk, just so you can offset the effects of inflation, which will erode your purchasing power. Let's do this. You stay right there, and we'll finish up after the break. Our thanks to Certified Kingdom Advisor Wade Chessman, President and Wealth Advisor, and his team at Chessman Wealth Strategies in Dallas for their support of faith and finance. Their goal is to help their clients expand their understanding of biblical financial principles and how to implement them. The website website is chessmanwealth.com. The phone number is 214-572-2120. Investment advisory services offered through CWM LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.
Today's issues.
Blaming a gun for a violent crime or a murder is like blaming the pencil for a misspelled word.
Ooh, I like that.
That would be like a student who he does terrible on spelling, and he says,
We've had a rash of pencil-oriented mistakes.
misspelled words.
Today's issues. Weekday mornings at 11 Eastern, 10 Central on American Family Radio. Absolutely free. We know you've learned to be suspicious of those words, but really, you can get biblical financial wisdom delivered to your inbox each week absolutely free. Articles, videos, podcasts, and special offers on biblical resources. Nearly 60,000 people receive our free weekly wisdom email, and you can too. Create your free FaithFi account by going to faithfi.com and click sign up to begin receiving weekly wisdom in your inbox. We are grateful for support from Sound Mind Investing and the Faith and Finance Program. For more than 30 years, they've been helping Christians reach their financial goals with step-by-step guidance for investors at every stage, from those just getting started to those getting ready for retirement. Through scriptural principles and practical suggestions, SMI offers financial wisdom for living well. More information, including the short video webinar on profit and peace of mind, no matter what's happening in the market, is available at soundmindinvesting.org.
So glad to have you with us today on Faith and Finance on American Family Radio. I'm Rob West. I've got room for one or two more questions today between now and the end of the broadcast. Here in this segment, 800-525-7000. Just before the break, we were talking to Christy in Texas. She's got a Fidelity 401k. She's left the company. There's about $120,000 in there. With the other retirement assets she and her husband have, maybe they have $150,000. She's probably 3 years out from retirement and just wondering, what should I do with this? And what's it going to cost for me to pay somebody to manage this? And what about the risk of loss that I'm going to be taking? And what I was saying, Christy, is, the step one is to really take a step back and say, what does God have for us in this next season of life, and pray through that so you know what you're retiring to, not what you're retiring from. Second is, what is it going to cost to fund the lifestyle that we believe God has called us to in retirement? And often that's 70 to 80% of your pre-retirement income. And then where's that going to come from? And if the majority of it is going to come from Social Security, well, can we work a little bit longer and delay that to build that payment so that we lock in, that highest payment possible for the rest of our lives? But to the extent it's not going to cover all of it, and it was not only intended to only cover about 40% of your pre-retirement income. So that's got to come from an retirement nest egg. And, if you have 150 and let's say you invest that and it grows to 200 between now and, your retirement, well, that would throw off about $650 a month at a 4% withdrawal rate. And that would be ideal, because if it's invested properly with like 30% in stocks and maybe 70% in bonds, you should be able to, cover that 4% a year and see that portfolio remain level over time. Now, at any given quarter or year, it could be down or up, but the idea would be to maintain it and allow you to pull about $8,000 a year out. Question is that enough to cover your lifestyle? And if not, then we have to back up and say, okay, maybe we have to work longer, or we have to cut back, or whatever that might be. Now, in terms of how to go about managing that you brought up two questions. One is, what is it going to cost to have somebody manage it? Because I'm suggesting that's probably what you need to do, and it's probably going to cost you maybe 1% a year. So that's $1,500 on a $150,000 portfolio. And yes, that's a lot of money, but at the same time, it's a lot of money that you've accumulated, and you don't want to just put it on autopilot. You want somebody waking up who's taking responsibility for growing it and protecting it. The second thing you brought up was the risk that you're taking. And yes, there's risk, but keep in mind, when you reach age 65 in the United States, your life expectancy is 86. Males can expect to live to 83. And so if the Lord tarries, we need this money to last for decades. And so, your ability to overcome the effects of inflation, the loss of purchasing power with this money, I think is incumbent upon your ability to take some modest amount of risk so that you have some growth component in there, even though you're going to be far more conservative than you would have been in your 40s, let's say. So I know there's a lot to that, but how does that all sit with you?
Well, you have helped me to understand a little bit, and that especially, the cost of a consultant. That I didn't know that without taking that step to contact one.
Sure.
So that was helpful. But I think you've been very helpful.
Okay.
In it.
Yeah, well, if you want, and I realize these are not easy decisions, and I don't pretend to make them that way, but I do think hopefully it's giving you some things to think about, and my next step would be to contact 2 or 3 what we call certified kingdom advisors. So there's 1,500 or so men and women across the U.S. and Canada that have earned the only industry designation for those who bring a biblical worldview of professional financial decision making and investments, and there's probably some right there in your area in Texas. So I'd go to our website, faithfi.com, and then click Find a CKA, and you could do a zip code search, and I would say you and your husband would go sit down with 2 or 3, and that's probably the next step, because if you hire somebody to manage this for you, you'd want to let them open the IRA for you, and then they'll help you get that money rolled over, because you'll want to use the custodian that they use. They might use Fidelity, or they might use Schwab, or they might use Merrill Lynch, or it could be any number of firms, but there's no reason for you to open that account if you think you might hire somebody to manage this for you. So I hope that helps you and gives you some things to think about, and we appreciate your call today. May the Lord bless you. 800-525-7000 is the number to call. We have room for maybe one more question today if you want to be on the program. Let's stay right here in Texas to another first-time caller, Gloria. You're next on the program. Go ahead.
Hi. Hello. Thank you for taking my call, and God bless you for what you do.
Thank you.
My question is, so we have a significant amount remaining on our mortgage, and I'll be 58 soon. I just wondered, as far as when you're creating a trust, because that's going to be my next question, create a trust, because we have a son who has Down syndrome, so it's a special needs trust, and we have $500,000 worth of life insurance between my husband and myself. Thank God I got it before a breast cancer diagnosis. But all of those we've left as contingent beneficiary. We are each other's beneficiary, but contingent beneficiary is my sister-in-law to take over the care of our son. We currently have guardianship. My question is, our mortgage is still, we're definitely not going to outlive, well, I should hope that we could pay it off if God provides, if our mortgage is not paid off by the time we leave to go be with the Lord, how does that work when you're building a trust?
Yes. Well, the estate would have to be settled before anything is distributed. What I think you would want to do is, under Texas law, a special needs trust, if you don't already have one, is the type of trust that allows for a person with a disability to have money put aside for their care. Additionally, the special needs trust still allows the individual with the disability to be eligible for all government benefits they're entitled to, despite the assets that are in the trust. And so what you would typically do is make the trust the beneficiary of the insurance benefit, if there is one, and then all of the obligations of the estate would be settled and paid, including the house sold if that's what's supposed to happen, and the mortgage paid, and then what's remaining in the trust would then be available based on the trust guidelines, and whoever is going to be the new guardian for your special needs child to be able to access those funds for his benefit. And so what I would do is, find a godly estate planning attorney who has some experience in this area of special needs to put this trust in place and allow you to work through all of these issues to ensure that everything's set up properly, and whenever the Lord takes you all home, that these funds are there, for his benefit.
Okay, so that was my second question is, do you guys have a list of godly trust attorney.
Yeah, I wish we did, but here's what I can recommend, Gloria. So I've mentioned a couple of times on this program, Certified Kingdom Advisor. There are CKAs in the estate planning area, but there's far fewer of them. The majority of them are in the financial planning and the investment area. So what I would do is still contact the CKA there in Texas, but I'd ask for a referral to a godly estate planning attorney. They will all have one that they work with because this is a critical part of financial planning. So just go to our website, faithfi.com, faithfi.com, click Find a CKA, do a zip code search, contact any one of those CKAs that come up in your area and just say, I need a referral. I listen to Faith and Finance on American Family Radio. I need an estate planning attorney who shares my values. Rob told me you can direct me to who I need to talk to, and I think that will get you where you need to go.
Okay, thank you so much. Sorry, this car alarm went off next week.
Oh, no problem, Gloria. Hey, listen, Lord bless you, and we appreciate you being on the program today. Thanks for calling. 800-525-7000. I may be able to sneak in one more call. You know, one of the things we've been talking about today is this idea of wealth transfer, and that's obviously what Gloria was talking about as well. And I talked about the treatment decision I talked about the transfer decision a moment ago that Ron Blue talks about in his book, Splitting Hairs. Who is the next steward and are they prepared? And we talked about the treasure principle and the unity principle and that wisdom principle that if you're going to pass wealth, you need to pass wisdom first. Well, the next decision is the treatment decision, meaning how am I going to treat each of these potential recipients or stewards of what God has entrusted to me. And one of the principles that Ron talks about that usually maybe ruffles some feathers, I mean, that may be a little harsh, but you'll understand when I say it, because it flies in the face of kind of how we're conditioned as Americans in particular, and that is, here's the uniqueness principle. If you love your children, you will treat, if you love your children equally, you will treat them uniquely. And a lot of people say, wait a minute, I couldn't give more to one than the other. But the principle, he says, actually adds value to your children because you can decide to treat them equally, of course. But in the end, the process of arriving in that decision is very important because we need to consider that they're in different stages of life.
タコ作っとくよ。昼食はタコ作っとくから。
Decisions and handle money differently, and often they'll have different needs. One might be a single parent really struggling, the other might be really well off. So I think it's important to really prayerfully consider how are we going to leave this money. And Ron says you want to never use money to get between a husband and wife. One is your child, one is your child-in-law. And so you don't want to come between them. So think about how the money could do that. You don't want to get between a parent and a child, and you don't want to commit heirs to a lifestyle or change their lifestyle necessarily through this gift of an inheritance. So something to really consider prayerfully. And again, this book, Splitting Hairs, could be a great resource to do it. Hey, folks, if you'd like to support our work here at Faith and Finance on American Family Radio, we'd be grateful. This is a listener-supported ministry, and you can give any amount, and we mean that. When you head to faithfi.com, just click give. Thanks to my team today, Jim Henry, Devin Patrick, and Robert Youngblood. For those three men, I'm Rob West, and thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
90.5 KTXG, Greenville, Dallas.
Hamilton III.
If you really want to see the tides turning in our country, can I challenge you and encourage you? If the Lord could grab a hold of us in our family, you would see the tide in our politics turn.
The Hamilton Quarter, weekday afternoons at 5 Central on American Family Radio.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
Hey.
American Family News, Amos DePue. U.S. Attorney Attorney General Merrick Garland is appearing now before the Republican-led House Judiciary Committee to address allegations that his department has been weaponized politically against conservatives.
Our job is to pursue justice without fear or favor. Our job is not to do what is politically convenient. Our job is not to take orders from the president, from Congress, or from anyone else about who or what to criminally investigate.
Congressman Mike Johnson of Louisiana responded.
The rule of law does distinguish our country, but you have not upheld that. You have allowed the rule of law to erode, and that's why 65% of the people in this country have no faith in the Department of Justice under your leadership.
A recent Gallup poll found a record low. 21% of Americans think it is a good time to buy a home. Young couples are especially leery of jumping into a mortgage. Vice President Kamala Harris argued Tuesday that it must be the climate causing this.
I've heard young leaders talk with me about a term they've coined called climate anxiety, which is fear of the future and the unknown, of whether it makes sense for you to even think about having children, whether it makes sense for you to think about aspiring to buy a home, because what will this climate be?
But Fox's Cheryl Casoni says it's not climate change, but it may have something to do with interest rates.
It's because right now the 30-year fixed mortgage rate is above 7%. It was sitting at 7.18%. We're going to get another read on that data today, actually. The other part of this I find interesting is that also you've got this recent Gallup poll that came out in May that showed that only 20% of Americans believe that buying a home is a good idea. Nobody talked about climate anxiety in their responses to Gallup back in May, just to be clear.
New York City's Cultural Affairs Committee has demanded the eviction of George Washington and Christopher Columbus and others from public spaces because of links to slavery, along with the establishment of a reparations task force. The plans before the City Council on Tuesday come after Mayor Eric Adams warned that New Yorkers face a financial tsunami from the cost of providing for more than 10,000 new migrants a month. New York City Councilman Joe Borelli says these people have one goal: erase history.
You know, this is like the return of the pumpkin spice latte. Every fall, the city council starts to chirp about how we have to remove Columbus statues. As you pointed out, they added reparations, they added George Washington. These are people who just want to erase our history. Thankfully, they haven't been too successful in the past. The public and a lot of other council members see right through the nonsense of this. So I'm anticipating this won't go far, but this really does cut right to the heart of who progressives are. These are people who want to erase our shared experience, faults and all, but erase our shared experience as Americans.
A California school district maintains the Attorney General has no grounds to bring a lawsuit against the district. Chris Woodward has more.
Chino Valley Unified School District has a policy requiring parents be notified if their child is wanting to change gender identity or pronouns at school. California Attorney General Rob Bonta filed a lawsuit in state court against the policy. Attorney Emily Ray of Liberty Justice Center, the law firm representing the school district.
The Attorney General doesn't have grounds to bring this lawsuit. I mean, the lawsuit points to laws, but none of them actually supports the points that the Attorney General is trying to make. California law actually supports Chino Valley here. It supports transparency and collaboration between schools and parents, which is exactly what this Chino Valley policy is about.
Meanwhile, Ray says parents still have rights when their children are in schools.
Parents have a right to information about their children when they're at school, and that includes information related to gender identity, along with a host of other issues.
Chino Valley is not the only district with such a policy, but it does appear to be the only district at this time to be challenged by the Attorney General. I'm Chris Woodward.
And stocks are ticking higher as Wall Street waits to see the Federal Reserve's latest forecast for where interest rates may be heading. More news online at afn.net and download the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
What we believe about the Bible is based on what we believe about its source.
The God Who Speaks, the award-winning documentary from the American Family Association, is now available in a special limited edition DVD set. This release includes a Sunday school curriculum and 2 hours of additional footage. Go to thegodwhospeaks.org to get your copy today. thegodwhospeaks.org. Welcome to today's issues. Join us for the next hour as we offer a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Ed Vitagliano.
And welcome everyone to Ed Vitagliano, sitting in for Tim Wildman today. I'm joined in studio by Fred Jackson. Good morning, Fred.
Good morning.
And Chris Woodward, our news reporter from American Family News. Good morning to you, Chris.
Good morning.
What is this American Family News of which I speak?
Yes.
Why don't you tell our listeners again? Let's do a little commercial.
Thank you very much.
For what you do.
American Family News is the news division of American Family Association and American Family Radio. We have newscasts at the top of every hour on AFR stations and a few others, about 100 now that run our news, right, Fred?
Yep.
AFN.net is the website for American Family News. So what you hear on the radio at the top of every hour, you're going to find in print on AFN.net, but Fred and others do a really great job of keeping us chock full of Associated Press content and columns and even political cartoons. If you are one of the people that don't like to read so much, we do also have videos that you can watch and find out things going on in this country.
All right. So how do folks sign up for that?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
If they want to get once a day, we don't pester people.
No.
Once a day, they can get an email that drops some of the top stories into their email to their box, and then they can click through and then get to the AFN website where all this other stuff is located, right?
If you go to AFN.net, or I should say when you go to AFN.net, look in the upper right corner of the website. There's a button that says subscribe. Click on that. Give us your first and last name and an email address. We're not going to share your information. That's just so we know where to signing up.
Send it.
Yeah, and once a day, mid-afternoon, you're going to get an email with 5 or 6 links, all the stories that you need to know to keep you and your church and community informed.
All right. Well, good job. I encourage you to do that, folks.
Good morning. Good morning.
How are you today?
Good. How are you?
All good.
This is good for health. The vitamins, you might want to take it.
Okay.
And give me a call if you're interested.
Okay.
It's one for you too. It is vitamins,
Nakajima.
For your health.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you just now do you do like per like person? So you do like a run on each person and then see what vitamins they need? Okay, for sure.
But you have to keep your health.
Right. Absolutely. Yes, sir. Yeah, I'll look into this. So I've been looking for new vitamins.
Yeah. It's better than buying the CBS. It's more professional, to keep yourself healthy. Yeah.
Okay. I got a card for you.
Oh, okay, great.
If you've been having a great experience, a review would do good.
Oh, yes.
Just leave a review for us, okay?
Okay, great.
Yes,
yeah, 5 stars.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I appreciate this for sure.